I have a top 5 for 1967.
Same.
Shall we play that game?
Let's play that game. It's one of my favorite games we play. In fact, it might be my favorite game we play on this podcast.
Well, then I'll let you go first.
All right, cool. I have one honorable mention film. It's the Truman Capote adaptation In Cold Blood. I actually just saw this movie fairly recently, and it holds up pretty well. Robert Blake is pretty good in it, despite the fact that he murdered his wife.
Well, he hadn't done that yet.
That's true. He hadn't. So I guess it's okay to say that his performance is pretty good.
We said his performance in Treasure of the Sierra Madre as a little Mexican boy was pretty good. So we can say
that's true. It was. He's kind of integral to the plot of that movie too. He's very key. So now we get into
quick question. Who directed that movie?
Richard Brooks.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Proper now. At number 5 is The Jungle Book, a Disney movie, which I still think is very, very good. Number 4 is one we just talked about at quite length, is The Battle of Algiers. And knowing that I had this at 4.5 stars and think very highly of it means it's a pretty, 1967 is a pretty good year. Number 3 is another one we just talked about at great length. That's Cool Hand Luke. My number 2 is another one we just mentioned briefly, but I think it's just a great, great movie. One I saw at a great time when I was formulating a lot of opinions on movies, is The Graduate. And then my number 1 movie of 1967 is one that I've seen just a bunch of times and I think is amazing. I love Bonnie and Clyde.
Okay, great. So we have quite a bit of crossover, as you would expect, but not all. My one honorable mention is The Jungle Book. I think it's pretty solid. I think it kind of falls off near the end, but the voice cast for it is really wild. Sebastian Cabot as Bagheera is just so funny. I look at my cat a lot and want to call him Bagheera because of Cabot's voice performance. George Sanders, who has one of the coolest voices in the history of Hollywood. We talked about him because he was in not Children of the Corn. It's called
Village of the Damned.
Village of the Damned. He was great in that. And then Sterling Holloway, who's the voice of Winnie the Pooh, was wonderful doing basically the voice of Winnie the Pooh as Kaa, the snake. And then most people really like Phil Harris's Baloo, but I don't know, that one doesn't stick with me as much, although I love that song. My number 5 proper is Bonnie and Clyde, which I saw recently and was really shocked to learn that Gene Wilder was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Wilder had another, so I'll play your game and not mention the producers in my list because technically came out in 68,
Yep.
It premiered in 67, but had its real release in 68. My number 4 is A Guide for the Married Man, which I've talked about before. It was directed by Gene Kelly. It's a farce comedy, sort of almost like a clip show, but it stars Walter Matthau as a guy who wants to cheat on his wife and is learning how to do it. Lucille Ball's in this, Art Carney's in this. A lot of people show up in vignettes. It's a lot of fun. And it's just really funny that Gene Kelly directed it. It's not a musical.
Yeah, weird.
My number 3 is In the Heat of the Night, the movie that ran the table on the Oscars. My number 2 is The Graduate. Just like really, man, if Dustin Hoffman's in it, I have a hard time not ranking it very highly. And you mentioned Robert Blake. A lot of people have, he didn't murder anyone, but a lot of people really hate Dustin Hoffman for the way he's treated people and things he's probably done to folks. Not a murderer, but I still love him, even though he's flawed. And then number 1 for me is Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, great year. 1967, like I said, has some absolute all-timers in it.
Yeah, 66 and 68, also great, which made doing my top 5 kind of complicated because of release date stuff. But that's where everything lands for me here.